Hello friends, welcome back to Strategic Management Process, and we were talking about different levels or stages of strategy, and those stages give us a place, a situation to structure the steps, strategic steps, which if you will definitely at the end of the course, but if you will try to analyze before that also, you would realize in practical life, you would realize that, for example, a company is trying to reposition its products. Now that is driven by a functional level strategic step and is directed towards business level strategic step in coherence with the vision and mission, and several decisions then would be taken at the corporate level, or probably at the corporate level some decision has been taken and then business level strategic choices have been made, and the story is executed at the level of functionality, wherein this repositioning exercise is being done through an advertising campaign, a new look, for example, a new perspective around the product, and so on. Last session I talked about very briefly about Nexa, for example, and you may think in terms of several other kinds of examples. For example, when Bata repositioned itself as an organization and they rejuvenated their life cycle. I would be coming to organizational life cycle perspective in my next session, but just to give you an example. So, complete organizational life cycle was being rejuvenated and organization was being repositioned in the minds of customers. Bata was not doing so good at that time when this exercise was done, and then large number of retail stores were opened up and the story changed. What I am trying to tell you here is that we have to choose a stage and a level from where to initiate that step. I would be talking extensively about that, and actually this subject is all about that. So, that is where we have to focus. Now, let me take you back to this, this is what we were talking about. So, corporate strategy, two-way influence, wherein business strategy and corporate strategy are associated with each other. So, decision taken at corporate level would be executed at the business level, and this business strategy takes or gives directions to functional level strategies, what has to be done. As I said, when you are adding a product to the product line, that is similar kind of a product with a variation is being produced, then definitely the production line has also to be taken into consideration, and production and operations system has to be considered. That perspective has to be given to the operations team, the production team, because then they have to look into the resources, the procurement of the supplies, the production capacity, human resource which has to be infused in that. For example, you say that we would be producing a variant of a car. Now, it's not a big question if you have a production capacity available on that line, but if you do not have production capacity and still you are willing to go for a variant of a car, then you have to add the production capacity or you have to reduce the production of the existing model basically. Now, these are the questions wherein functional area strategies and those kind of strategies are chosen, or in they are brought in coherence with each other, and then this operating strategies, what actions, what specific elements of action you would be choosing, how you would be choosing that, and so on. So, this is what we are actually talking about here, and let us see, we are talking of execution of strategy in coherence with the objectives which we formulated, and the subsequent step which we talked about. So, and subsequent step was crafting specific strategy to achieve the objectives and the company vision. So, now we are at this stage of executing the strategy. Let us see how to execute the strategy. There is a very specific demarcation between crafting and execution, as you would understand, and that is what I wish you to for you to realize at this particular stage. Revisit the earlier session so that you may have a distinct perspective around setting objectives and then crafting strategy to achieve the objectives, because here we would be talking about executing the strategy. Let us see what does it says, and definitely there is a scope for revising and revisiting what the kinds of execution steps which we formulate. So, let us take the clue from the authors Kellett, Thompson, Strickland and Gamble, and we are following them for quite some time. So, executing the strategy says that managing the implementation of a strategy is the most demanding and time consuming part of the strategy management process, because you have to bring everything on the ground, and that is actually physical. When we are talking of production, for example, when you say that the objectives is that you have to serve large number of customers through a latest variant of potato chips. Now, having said this, you have crafted the strategy, you have structured the strategy that okay, that we will increase the procurement of potatoes from the field. Now then we would be processing this, and then in labs we would be developing this kind of a flavor. Marketing research has to be clubbed in for understanding that if this flavor would work or no. Then how to position that, advertising and marketing team would be roped in. Then retail team has to be, or sales team has to be taken into confidence, distribution team has to be taken into the confidence, agents have to be taken into the confidence, retail outlets have to be taken into the confidence. You have to conceive that why would people accept this or no. Then you have to think in terms of how they would like the product in the initial phase, and so many activities have to go into this very simple thing. If you are coming up with, let us say, what was that new flavor, chili honey, some company marketed, and then several other flavors. Now, once you are going for this kind of a thing, basically, then you see you have said that okay, the strategy has been crafted and the steps have been chosen, and the human resource has to be taken into consideration, that they have to work more, or let us say partially, and then production capacity and so on. So you have, and finances, investments, and then the complete thing has to be associated with the stockholders value, and so on. Several kinds of things are there, which we will be talking about definitely in sequence, in structured manner, more structured manner. But you have crafted a strategic framework. Objectives we have well defined, it is in well in coherence with vision and mission of the organization. You may, in the meanwhile, you may visit the vision and mission of any potato chips company for that matter. Now, we have to take it on the ground. Now, for taking it on the ground, you have to negotiate with the farmers, you have to physically go there, you have to procure, you have to manage the quality which you would be getting for that kind of a product basically. Then you have to shift those things. You understand what I mean basically. Everything has to be done on the ground specifically according to a situation, and it has to be executed on the ground. The objective of this execution, is that particular potato chips, the pack has to be finally opened up by the consumer, and consumer should take it in one's mouth and say, oh yes, this is the flavor. That is where the execution of strategy comes in, and this is not just marketing a product strategy, this is strategy in entirety, strategic steps I am referring to as of now. So, managing the implementation of a strategy is the most demanding and time consuming part of strategic management process. Converting strategic plans into actions, that is what we are referring to here, and that is how I described this in front of you, and results test the manager's ability to direct organizational change, motivate company personnel, build and strengthen competitive capabilities, create and nurture a strategy supportive work climate, and meet or beat performance targets. For a simple product like potato chips, the process is same. For introducing an automotive variant, the option is same. For launching a new airlines by a group, for example, one international airlines is coming to India to launch their branch here, or collaborating with some Indian airlines here, the process is same. Whichever way you want to look at it, you see. So, for launching a new hotel chain, the process is same. For developing a university, the process is same. So, smaller or bigger, the process is actually same when you are thinking in terms of executing strategy. And I am talking of launching things. Keep aside launches or newer businesses basically, and then we have talked about that earlier as well, launching a extremely new business, or launching a new product by an existing business, or making changes in the existing setup, or no launches of new product. Basically, you are actually enhancing the efficiency of your organization. You are trying to develop further stockholders value, you are trying to strengthen the life cycle of the organization. We will be talking about that in next session. So, please be ready for that, and there we would be using an important reference which which is coming for you. So, each company manager needs to think through these questions. And what are those questions? What needs to be done in my area to execute my piece of strategic plan? Every functional manager is having this question in his or her mind, and this question which they are having, they know that everything has to be done in coherence with all the departments, all the functional units of that organization. And if you are engaging multi-location production system, for example, a furniture company having different kinds of production facilities in different regions, that is, this part of the product would be finished in this country or let us say this region, and then this part would be sent to some other region wherein this product would be finished. There are many shoe manufacturers who do that, there are many furniture manufacturers who do that, there are many organizations who do that, steel manufacturers who do that. They are processing parts of that particular product in different countries even. So, you see, everyone is in sync with each other. Then what actions should I take to get the process underway? You have to create a checklist. If you are an expert in creating that checklist, you have a format, but then you have to revisit that format for the time being. How much internal change is needed? Do we have to bring in new people on board? Do we have to retrain or extend extra training to our existing team? Do we have to send them for a particular kind of a course? Do we have to train them for as a matter of some new technology is being deployed? So, what kind of internal change is needed, which demands on how much of the strategy is new, how far internal practices and competencies deviate from what the strategy requires. People are used to some routines basically, people are well equipped with what they are doing, people may be resistant to change, people would not like change so easily. So, how to inculcate that thing, and that cannot be done overnight. So, if you are thinking about these kind of things, that has to be thought of from an earlier stage basically. So, how well the present work culture supports good strategy and execution, and here comes the reference to culture once again, but it comes in the form of work. But culture is culture basically. If culture is based on the values and it is nurturing those values, work culture can be supported. Work culture is how you do things, how well you are into, how purposefully you are into things is a culture and is a cultural aspect, and then work culture is the reflection of your cultural values basically, and that is why we spend a specific kind of a time in understanding, or let us say I would not say understanding, but discussing culture and cultural values. Managing the strategy execution process includes the following principal aspects. Creating a strategy supporting structure. Now, this is slightly has to be understood briefly at length. When you say that you are creating a supporting structure, so structure of an organization is related to how you communicate within the organization. What is the reporting pattern? What is the responsibility and duty pattern you have as far as the organization goes? If it is highly vertical, means X is reporting to Y, Y is reporting to Z, and so on whatsoever. If it is semi vertical, that there is someone A and then there are two B's and two C's, for example managing director, directors and managers and executors and so on, or there is a slightly flatter kind of a thing, that there is a leadership and then there are several people working. Every form of organization structure has its advantages and disadvantages as well. In organizations, for example defense forces, it has to be vertical, it has to be a reporting pattern basically, it has to be a responsibility kind of a structure, because it requires so. Therein someone strategizes, someone executes, and execution has to be precise. So, there has to be a command sort of a thing. So, that can be a structure basically, but then where a lot of creativity is required, highly flat kind of a structure is required, and then informal communication is required, informal environment is required and so on. So, structure is somehow related to communication, responsibilities and duties. And when we say a strategy supporting structure, that means if the strategy requires lot of creativity, lot of things which have to be project associated, And if a younger person is your project head basically or project lead, then you have to support that younger person in those kind of things. For example, if you are designing a new product, let us say when Mahindras, they were designing Scorpio, at that time a particular kind of a group is conceiving a new product, and whole of the organization has to collaborate with them, support them. They would require things from you, they would require insights from you, that they would like to learn that what kind of a production changes production team is ready to do, what kind of R&D technology as well as systems can be introduced, and who is going to do that. Even if the team is younger, they do not stand at that level in hierarchy. They are at a lesser pay grade as compared to the people who have to follow them. Then also there has to be this kind of a flexibility wherein strategy supporting structure has to be there. You must have heard that phrase in movies, this is well above your pay grade. So, but you can't say that when you are going for project based kind of a thing. An intelligent high tech person graduating from best of the universities, very young boy or girl, knows what to do best in this kind of a case. So, everyone has to abide by that, and he or she would teach you how to do that, even if you are at a very senior level of that position, for example. So, that kind of a thing. On the other side, a very young CEO joins the organization and takes over, and that CEO has a very futuristic kind of a perspective, that CEO has a product in mind and market research, and his own team says yes, this can bring the organization to a different level, let us do it. And the CEO calls for as far as the support of whole of the organization has to extend the support. If that does not goes, then there are several disasters which have taken place in organizations. I would not enumerate those disasters. You may find out organizations failing on the basis of inability of the organization to be flexible in terms of strategy supporting structures, and you would realize what I am talking of. Just Google that, you will find several kinds of stories on that. Go to Google Scholar, try to find out failed products, and you would realize that. Or you may realize organizations which could not do well, you would find several research papers and so on. This is just a clue. So, that is where strategy supporting structure is there, and I named Mahindra. Mahindra is a success story in terms of being flexible and nurturing strategy supporting structure to come up with a very successful product, and then traversing that energy into different kinds of business areas and rejuvenating itself as a conglomerate which is doing exceptionally well in this country today and internationally also, globally. Staffing the organization to obtain needed skills and expertise. How to bring in those people? Now, these are very important questions. You may, if an organization is doing exceptionally well, they are having lots of profits, they have a huge brand image, everyone would like to join that. So, you just go to the campuses, you come to IIT Roorkee especially, and then you would realize that yes, people are ready to work there. But if somehow organization has already stagnated, by life cycle principle, which we would be talking about later on, but by life cycle principle, if organization is somehow not doing so well, it seems that it is dipping down many people, and you are unable to offer that kind of a salary package also. Somehow it is not comparatively that good as many organizations are trying to do. So, then attracting a good talent which would make changes to your world is not that easy. So, needed skills and expertise, obtaining such skills and expertise is a very tough job. It is harder than customer sales many a times. Developing and strengthening strategy supporting resources and capabilities. And I told you earlier, and this is an important kind of a thing which one must remember and realize, that identification of resources, finding those resources, bringing those resources on board and utilizing those resources are few of the several resources in terms of utilization of resources and capabilities. Many times you have this idea that a material change in this product, usage of a newer kind of a material, let us say a composite in a product basically. So, composite are 2 or 3 kinds of products mixed together to make one product basically, and IIT Roorkee has a lot of research. We have done a lot of research, several of my colleagues, they have done several researches in composites basically. So, material composites and chemical composites and several kinds of composites basically. So, now once you are going for using these kind of composites, you you know that composites would reduce your cost and would you reduce the weight of the product and would be X, Y or Z, whatever, you know that. But then identifying the source of development of those things, research and development sources, bringing those things on board, developing those products, identifying organizations who would do that for you as ancillary support, or creating one of your own setups to manufacture that and then utilize it as a resource is a tough deal. For example, when we were moving from the complete full metal based automotive structures to mixtures of different kinds of materials for developing lightweight scooters, motorcycles and cars, that was the time when we were trying to do this, and we started that journey from aeroplanes and then we moved on to automotives, and today we are using composites in almost at every place basically. Several of my colleagues they are trying to develop further composites here, and someday we might talk about that. So, developing and strengthening strategy, supporting resources and capabilities, allocating ample resources to activities critical to the strategic success. Procurement of that large kind of resource to do that basically. In electric vehicles, first issue was identifying the resources, then directing those resources to manufacture EVs, then collating every member of the value chain, suppliers, retailers, service stations in that setup. Charging stations has been a big issue, it still is an issue which government and manufacturers, they are bent on resolving, and they are doing that very quickly and very effectively nowadays. But then it has been an issue. So, allocating ample resources to activities critical to the strategic success. So, story of electric vehicles, hydrogen based vehicles and so on is that kind of a story which we have passed through. It is a very recent phenomena, you can learn it from the websites. Ensuring that policies and procedures facilitate effective strategy execution. What are your organizational policies, what are procedures you are going to follow and so on. Organizing the work effort along the lines of the best practices and so on, and upgrading the organization to that level. So, these are very critical principal aspects which you have to think of. Some others are installing information and operating systems that enable company personnel to perform essential activities, upgrading your software system basically, purchasing that software or developing that software of your own. If you refer to successful organizations like Amazon, you would realize that they devoted a lot of time in developing their own software and to collate that all of their activities with that, and looking into every single aspect of it. It's a very tedious kind of a process. Motivating people and tying rewards directly to the achievement of the performance objectives. There would be many failures, and then there are several kinds of innovations which have been talked about throughout this world, that you can refer to my subject, innovation in marketing, marketing of innovation. But then definitely there are several kinds of things when you say that people are afraid of trying new things. So, you have to associate even failures with as far as rewards. Tata's is one of those organizations which does that. Then you have to motivate people to attempt to do newer things. You have to bring in that work culture depending upon what cohesive culture you already have in your organization. Creating a company culture conducive to successful strategy execution. Overall, again we are referring to work culture. Exerting the internal leadership needed to propel implementation forward. Leadership you can admire, whom you consider, yes, if they are motivating us to do that, then we should be doing that. Otherwise, if leadership element is not there, then despite of everything you might not take it further. Now we are reaching to a stage of monitoring developments, evaluating performances and initiating corrective adjustments. It is a very critical stage. This stage is the trigger point for deciding whether to continue or change the company's vision and mission, objective, strategy or strategy execution methods. Benchmarks we have talked about, scales we have talked about. So, now we are using those to monitoring the performance overall. If a company experiences a downturn in its market position, Nexa did well, but they were monitoring that. So, downturn in its market position or persistent shortfalls in performance, then company managers are obligated to ferret out the causes. Do they relate to poor strategy execution, or both? And take timely corrective action. A company's direction, objectives and strategy have to be revisited anytime or every time. There are many products which were launched in due course of time. Most visible of them definitely are airlines, automotives, housing and construction, most visible, and many times some consumer products also. You know that better than me probably, because everyone is looking around, and we know there are several stories. You just go to, let's say, automotive retail market of sorts, or wherever there are so many retail showrooms, and you would realize that what I am talking about. You may get to know that there was a showroom here which has been shifted, which has been changed to a newer kind of an organization, or given to a newer kind of an organization, because the earlier organization did not do well at all. There were several airlines which were launched, and they are no more there, or they are flying in a scant manner. So, this is where this monitoring system helps. If that is done simultaneously along with everything basically, or at every stage, and you are having a very precise eye for that, then only things would go. Because when you have crafted, when you have decided the objectives, you have crafted the strategy, and you are executing that, it is just like that you have actually fired a gun, or you have shot an arrow, and the direction has to be maintained. So, I do not know when should we be running along the arrow, I do not know, but again the point is that you have to be precise. It is like that you have initiated the process, and that is how things are done. For example, if Hero Motors said that we are going for additional production capacity at the time when they were dissociating with Honda, they had everything in mind in terms of as far as how they would be executing whatever they are thinking in terms of crafting strategy, and they did it well. I told you earlier probably also that I was meeting one of the senior executives, and he said that this is one of the rarest dissociations in this country between the two partners, wherein the Indian partner has grown bigger as compared to the foreign partner, and they are doing well and are being looked upon by the foreign partner. Definitely a big compliment for Hero Motors. So, now the last part, revise as needed in light of the company's actual performance, changing conditions, new opportunities and new ideas. Revise everything if it is not in coherence with the performance you thought of. If the conditions are changing rapidly, COVID came in, we never knew, and it is just an example, but it is a drastic example. God forbid it should not come back anyways. New opportunities and new ideas. Opportunities can knock from any side, and newer ideas can be there from any side basically. So, that is where I stop this discussion, and I wish for you to revisit this complete process, think of the products or services, and think of the organizations, read about their stories, try to fit in the complete narrative you have in mind on this structure which we discussed, basically strategic management process, and try to think that how things were done, how things were made successful at the end of the day. I will be catching up back with you with a session on organizational life cycle, which would be interesting for us to understand how organizations, they live a life, a long life, much longer than individuals like us. I will be catching up back with you very soon. Till then, goodbye.